Hello again, Struck. The launch of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is approaching very fast, and before we know it, the game will be here and we would all be grinding for that sweet wood. This is why I decided to start making a bunch of videos dedicated to some of the things in the game that players might want to know ahead of the game's launch. This video will be dedicated to the Chaos Chamber, which is one of the types of endgame Tiny Tina's Wonderlands can offer. I would also talk about some of the rewards you can expect and some other details related to directly or indirectly to the Chaos Chamber. So buckle up and I hope you enjoy the ride. Let's go. So I guess first we might want to explain what the Chaos Chamber is. Yeah, it is the endgame as I mentioned, a dungeon that changes every time you enter it for countless possibilities and rewards. Enter the Chaos Chamber, the core endgame loop of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Within the mythical Chaos Chamber is an ever-shifting portal into a randomized dungeon full of unique variables, killer enemies and methods to make your run more or less challenging depending on how brave you are feeling. Should you prove victorious, your rewards will be granted and your prowess may become the stuff of legend. In this installment, of the Death series, Death Diary series, which I'm giving you the information from, you can find the link in the description of this video. The developers talked everything about that dungeon, and I will try to as well repeat what they said and provide my commentary and views on those things. I think first of all, they're saying that at their most basic, a normal Chaos Chamber run is a randomized challenge that should take around 20 to 30 minutes to complete, and your path through the dungeon goes like this: 3 randomized dungeon rooms where you need to clear out a number of enemies before you can proceed, then a mini boss fight, followed by 3 more dungeon rooms, and finally a full-on main boss fight as the grand finale. Each time you complete a room that isn't immediately before a boss fight, you open 2 portals that give you a degree of choice over what you encounter in the next room. You have 3 lives to make it to the end of the dungeon. Lose them all and your run is a failure, but don't fear, you still get to keep any weapons and gear you've picked up during the run, which is great. And the developer, the lead designer Kent Rochefort, is saying we have over 60 level layouts which you mix and match throughout the dungeon run. On top of that, all the many types of enemies from the game can show up with up to 3 different kinds of armies in one room. There are also explosive barrels and traps that populate based on the room. Some are smaller, some are bigger, and they're saying that their level designers went with what felt appropriate for each particular combat arena in this regard. So further on, completing Chaos Chamber runs is a great way to farm wood once you finish the main story campaign. But it's even more important for those of us who are looking to min-max their gear and assemble all the pieces of the perfect character build. By successfully beating a Chaos Chamber, we'll be able to earn something called Moon Orbs, more about that later, which is an in-game currency that we can spend in the Enchantment Reroller station in Brightfoot. So we'll talk about that in a moment. So what is the Enchantment Reroller? They're not saying much, but you're saying that every time you use the Enchantment Reroller, you will be offered a random replacement for the enchantment effect on your gear, or the option to keep the one you've got. But this way, the way it's worded, I hope that's not true, but the way it's worded, it makes me feel like it's rerolling every single thing on the item and you can't walk in place certain things you like. So it's like completely re-rolling the item from scratch as if you've just gotten it anew. So whether that's the case or not, we'll find out once the game launches, or maybe if someone has some footage that's showing this, it would be nice. I'll keep looking at some of the footage the developers released for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands to see if there is one that shows this. But they're saying by rerolling the enchantments on your favorite pieces of gear, you can push their power even further by finding the enchantment that best synergizes with your loadout. Rerolling won't take many moon orbs when you first start out, but it will be exponentially more expensive the more times you reroll the same item. Which means, yeah, you might want to have multiple copies of one item if it's a complete reroll. And again, they're not mentioning anything about walking certain slots in place. The next thing I want to talk about is collecting crystals. Moon orbs are in the game, the in-game currency that you get after a Chaos Chamber run, but crystals are what is most important during your run. You can pick up crystals in a variety of ways during your run, but the most satisfying method is also the most consistent, smashing a crystalline rainbow glowing die that spawns when you've completed a room and opened up the portal to the next. The room completion reward went through so many different iterations, that's words of Kent again. In the beginning it was just a chest, then we went with dice because the fantasy of the game is about tabletop role playing. Originally you could interact with the dice to stop them rolling, and if you got a 20 you'd get better gear than if you had rolled say an 8. But they're saying again further that they felt that it was too random, so those dice went into the breakable state that's now in the game. It's an iterative process and they wanted dice, but not all of the inherent randomness that came with them. How this ends up we'll find out soon, I guess. So, how many crystals you collect impacts how many rewards you can score at the end of a Chaos Chamber dungeon. And more about that in a moment. So it's crucial that you get as many crystals as you can during your run, and you can amass bonus crystals by completing optional side objectives that are randomly assigned to each room with a wide variety of possibilities. Some of them would make you protect the statue of Queen Bud Stallion before it's defaced by baddies, or you'd be able to smash a statue of the villainous Dragon Ward, or even keeping a sentient fire or burning by feeding it souls of slain enemies. So, Kent's favorite side objective involves defeating enemies while standing on one of 2 enchanted circles that spawn somewhere in the level. And he further comments on that: I like that it forces you to hold your ground, whereas the combat is usually about running around and being mobile to avoid enemies, he says. And yeah, he says also that he feels that side objective brings something really different. So yeah, you always have 0 crystals at the start of a dungeon run and they don't carry over between runs, so use them or lose them. How do we use crystals exactly? Well, now this brings us to the next bit. Let's talk about blessings on blessings. Over the course of a Chaos Chamber run, you might stumble upon some ornate looking altars that offer unique buffs called blessings. If you cough up enough crystals to activate the altar, you will receive a blessing that applies for the remainder of your run, with subsequent altars costing more to activate as a consequence. Blessings are stackable and can be straightforward as increased critical damage or ammo capacity, though others may completely change up your playstyle for the rest of the run. Yeah, for example, there is a blessing that uses melee attack speed and movement speed buffs, and for melee builds or for mobility builds with nice range, that's amazing. You can just start running around and mashing the melee button to swing your way through enemies, is what Kent says. Blessings to your passive skills can also be imbued by Queen Bud Stallion herself if you choose one of her portals at the end of an encounter. The 2 portals that spawn in when you've beaten a room come in 4 different varieties. A crystal die that rewards you with more crystals, Queen Bud Stallion's favor via a helpful blessing, a gear die that awards you new loot when you beat the encounter, and an added layer of challenge in the form of a new curse. That last one is perfect for those who like to live dangerously, apparently. And that brings us again to the next bit of thing you want to talk about. Curses are the polar opposite of blessings, debuffs for you or boons for your enemies that last the rest of the Chaos Chamber run and can make it that much harder for you to survive. You have at least an inkling of the kind of challenge they'll bring, as curses offered are marked as easy, medium or hard. By taking on a curse, you'll be rewarded with extra crystals in exchange for the amped up difficulty, and some of the easy curses might even benefit you if your build can take advantage of them. So something else Kian says here is that in his opinion the hardest curse is Break It Up, which gives your enemies increased damage via higher firing rates and accuracy whenever they're near each other. And he further says that depending on the arena it can be pretty hard not to have all the enemies clumped together. So if you're a glutton for punishment, you can even spend some of your hard-earned crystals before you enter a portal to make the next encounter elite, which makes the enemies in the next room much more difficult. In return, the wood they drop will be improved should you actually manage to make it through. And yeah, some players would prefer to go easier, less rewards, or harder, better rewards. And speaking of rewards, let's move on to the next bit. Your hard-earned wood, your rewards that you put in blood and sweat and tears to get. After you fought tooth and nail through multiple Chaos Chamber runs, taken on the blessings and curses at your discretion, and put the smackdown on the final boss, you deserve some worthy rewards. A wealth of treasure awaits you in the loot of Chaos Arena you're transported to after defeating the last boss. With a chest full of desirable loot for the taking, but for dedicated wood grinders, the real Chaos Chamber payout might be hiding in the bellies of the spined, slightly disturbing rabbit statues that line the room. So above the gaping, pointy-toothed mouth of each rabbit statue is an icon representing a type of wood in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Guns like SMGs, assault rifles, wearable gear like rings and amulets, melee weapons and so on. By feeding a statue some of the crystals you've accumulated over your run, you can make it barf up a random piece of wood from its perspective wood type. Just ignore those bits of rainbow-colored puke. And bile, I guess. Through this method you have the means to chase after the best items for certain gear SWATs and certain types of gear for those SWATs, while enjoying the random madness inherent to the Chaos Chamber. And Ken says now you can target which wood type you want without just farming the same boss over and over again for 20 hours. And here I say thank you. This seemed so boring to me, the way Borderlands 3 ended up becoming fucking farming bosses over and over and over and over, the same boss, and it was boring, and most people were doing that, and trying to find people who didn't want to do that was difficult, and you had to kill the boss, re-walk, re-invite each other, and it was not fun for me, and I didn't like doing that. I prefer doing the other types of content in Borderlands 3. Thankfully this one here lets people target. Thank you, Kent, and your team. So it's saying, he also says it's still somewhat random, but the players have some control on the kinds of loot they want to prioritize. So as for those crystal munching rabbit statues, yeah, it's related to Tiny Tina. With these rabbits you're essentially making an offering to the god of the dungeon, its creator, which is Tiny Tina, ergo rabbits. And next bit will be more about competitiveness, so to say. What are the bragging rights in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands? Well, besides all the wood-spewing rabbit statues, something else you can enjoy after a successful completion of the Chaos Chamber is a victory screen jam-packed with info that recaps your run. So you'll be able to see things like offense, defense stats, per weapon kills, sword damage taken, blessings and curses you took, total crystals collected, and all sorts of other things. So yeah, it also will include an overview of your entire character build with your 2 multi-class selections, skill points, hero point distribution, and even the rarity of all the gear you brought into battle. And this is just neatly put into a screen that you can just screenshot and get all the information in that one screenshot to share with your buddies or whatever. So if you're wondering whose Fate Maker build truly reigns supreme, you can see where you stand thanks to the featured runs in the Chaos Chamber. What are featured runs? Well, here's a quote. Each featured run will be available for a week to all players, and that particular run is seeded, so it will always be the same. You can rerun it and the same elements will always spawn in the same place. The side objectives will all be the same, so that's very nice. There's featured run every week, I think, yeah. Or maybe month, I'm not sure. I think it will be week, yeah, for a week. So every week you have a featured run which is exactly the same monsters, enemies, and sequences of rooms and things like that, and the same side objectives, and you can just compete who will do that faster, better, and with more mayhem and destruction. Another quote here is, on the victory screen for featured runs we have little icons letting you know if you're ranked highly for certain parameters. How quickly you completed the run, how difficult it was based on any curses that you picked up, and how many crystals you've collected. It makes for a nice little community feature where you can see, oh, I managed to be in the top 100 for fastest completion of that featured run. It's a great way to compare builds among friends and compete to see who can get the fastest or most difficult finish of a run. So yeah, if you care about bragging rights, which I personally don't, this is your way of proving yourself, of saying, hey, look at my EP, it's bigger than yours, and so on. So yeah, they're mentioning something like another feature called Chaos Trio, but we'll have to wait when it's closer to the launch of the game before they reveal about the Chaos Trio. So I really hope that you've enjoyed all these bits of information. If you want to read it personally, check the link in the description. To get notified when I upload more content for this game or other Wooter and not so Wooter games, you can subscribe to my channel, hit that bell button to not miss out on any notifications when I upload videos, as well as be advised that there's something called memberships on YouTube, which lets people pay a monthly recurring fee that can be cancelled at any time to grant them special privileges such as emotes and badges that I've made myself, as well as they can talk to me to arrange one-on-one tutorials for Adobe Premiere, Photoshop and After Effects, just the basics, nothing too advanced. Thanks again for watching all the way until the end. Keep it cool, Struck Club. Until next time, and goodbye.